Did you talk to Lois?
I tried to call her yesterday. Yes, I did.
And that phone number is not working.
It just rang. It rang. I've got that same thing on my desk.
Well, I thought you did
do a better job of us going to
call that number
and I've never even tried to do that.
No, it rang through. Just didn't pick up.
Trainings and whatever.
On the, you mean like go to the conference?
I went to like one or two.
I've spoken to Ms. Muddleman before, and
you're supposed to do 24 hours.
40.
her
40
concern
hours,
was the last time was that it was just going to go straight through, and
It's 460 question. That's what I thought it might be.
and I told her that we were advocating for alternate.
Okay.
It carries
routes.
over, so I end up like
So-
I end up with
South.
67.
Yeah, south where it needs to go.
Year. So like
Good morning, everyone. Glad to have you here. A warm courtroom this morning is better than being outside. And, I'd like to start our meeting and ask Magistrate David Livingston to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
What was that eyeball?
yeah. You'll join me in the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Voice from the past,
Thank you all. Let me start the meeting with J.R. Brandenburg. J.R., I'd like to ask you to give just a short report, and then we'd like to express our appreciation for you and your road crew and their hard work that they always do, taking care of the county in very tough conditions. And then also like to thank Mike Hennigan and his team with EMA. Chief Canavy's here with us today, the fire department, and also our first responders with EMS and our law enforcement sheriff's office. Just being out there helping people, being prepared. We're blessed. It was a blessing for sure that it was not as bad as forecasted, and we'll take that every time. We'll be prepared, and if it goes just a little south or north, we'll be thankful. But JR, could you share how conditions are? And I know you all been out since about 3:30 this morning. Came back in, had a little breakfast, and then hit it again.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you. Without you in the courts, we couldn't do this. Great support from you guys. We appreciate it very much. Kept waiting around yesterday. It was supposed to hit a whole lot earlier. The temperature stayed up. Thank goodness it did. Transitioned to sleep probably a little after 9 last night. And we were just kind of waiting to hit the road when it was over with, the rain, and we loaded up and headed out last night. It came quickly, maybe a 1/4 inch of sleet in 30, 45 minutes. We pushed off what we could, put down a layer of salt, got back in 3:30 something this morning, took a couple hour break, rested a little bit, ate a good breakfast. They headed back out 7:30ish this morning. They're out now. The roads are cleaning up. Of course, the snow started again, probably 7, and it's almost out of here though. But the roads are cleaning up, and I think it's due to the fact that we put the layer of salt down, so it's not bonded to the blacktop. And we'll come in, eat, take a lunch break, clean it back up this afternoon, and we should be in real good shape.
That's fantastic, JR. Please share our appreciation with your staff, and any court members want to ask any questions of JR right now.
JR, how's the city and state roads?
They're working on them as we speak. They're out. They're doing what they need to do. So it might take them a little longer, the state roads, but they'll get there. And last night we had, and this morning too, we're having to fight a bunch of down trees here and there. I had to send a couple of trucks out with chainsaws and clear the roadways. We've had about a dozen roads blocked with trees. Got to get those out of the way before you get to plow through, but we're blessed that we didn't get the worst case scenario that was predicted for our area. So we'll be good by this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
You're very welcome.
Mike and Chief Canavy, y'all want to add anything about anything related to the storm? I know you were ready with, Mike was ready with warming shelters and transportation, and I know Chief Canavy and the team at the fire department was ready as well, so just didn't want to leave anyone out. So with that said, I'm going to transition to our presentation with Mr. Chase Azevedo with Georgetown Municipal Water and Sewer Service. Chase, are you with us?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've arranged to be able for you to share your screen so the PowerPoint could be shared as well. And
I'm still showing that I'm not able to share, that I'm disabled by the host, if they could give me permission.
all right, I bet we'll get that here in just a second. While we're settling that out, let me just give a little background. With the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, cities and counties and municipal water companies across the United States all were allocated amount of dollars, federal dollars, and before January 10th, I think, or January 7th, when the U.S. Treasury gave a final ruling on how these funds could be used, these funds were really relegated to 7 general areas. And one of the 7 general areas was water infrastructure. Knowing and having a good relationship with GMWSS and met with them several times, talking about potential projects that could benefit the whole county, I met with Chase and discussed possibilities and, how could we look at collaboration between the court and GMWSS to maybe fast track projects or a project that could impact a lot of people in our community and out in the county. Dr. Wallace and I went and met with Chase and his team a few weeks ago. Chase shared what he felt like as the director of GMWSS, what might be the best possible project that we could consider. What I'm asking the court to do today is listen to the presentation that's going to be shared, and what I'm proposing is that we consider some type of collaboration to consider this as we go forward on our capital projects monies that we have from ARPA. And I couldn't imagine a better project that would impact a lot of people than a water project like Chase is presenting. And I'll let Chase share, then we can have question and answers. And then Chief Canavy, Assistant Chief Canavy is here from our Scott County Fire Department. I'm going to ask him to share as well about how this might impact positively his service. So, Chase, it's all yours.
Judge, can you see the screen and can you hear me well?
100%. Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, thank you, Judge, for teeing that up for me. That was a really good overview of kind of where we are today and what you and I and Magistrate Wallace have discussed over the past few months. And I'll just say GMWSS expresses our appreciation for Mr. Brandenburg and his crews, because as well as Rob Bruin's crews working through the night, because we can't get in to serve our customers if they aren't out doing their hard work through the night. So we offer our appreciation as well. But good morning, and thank you for allowing me to attend and speak. I apologize that I'm not able to be with you in person. I'm actually at home today. Kids are out of school, so if for any reason you all want me to come back and do this in person, if you're unable to take away from it via virtual presentation, I'm happy to do that. I just was not able to to be here with you in person today. The county, the city, as well as Georgetown Municipal at this point, we've all received our notification of what our ARPA allocation is going to be, what each entity is going to receive. And as the judge said, he requested that I present this information on water system improvements to the court for your consideration. So I've got a brief presentation, and I understand that there's a number of important needs that the court is going to have to consider for use of ARPA funds. And I'm not here today to be greedy, to put it bluntly, to try to ask for a portion of the court's funding, because I know that we've already received or we will receive our own funding. And I want to be clear on that up front. The purpose here is that I would have liked to have used our allocation that we receive directly or will receive directly on the project that I'm going to talk to you about today. However, it just, that was not the direction we could take. And I'm going to go into that a little bit here in a few minutes. So as the judge said, he and I, as well as Magistrate Wallace, they requested this information because the project has the potential to positively impact so many people, both your all's constituents and my customers. So I think it's at least worthy of the time for you all to hear the information, so you can have that in the back of your head when you're deciding how to move forward with these funds. And just as a matter of housekeeping, I'd like to say I've got to talk about two different tracks here. I've got to talk about water supply and water storage, and this is drinking water, to make this make sense. And to be clear up front, this is a drinking water storage project, but you got to understand the supply side for this to make sense. So if you have any questions, just let me know as we go. Don't wait till the end. First part of this is everybody's aware of this. This is a review at this point, but we had ARPA implemented in 2021, and we know what it is. And as of today, we know that the city is going to be awarded just over $9 million, the fiscal court just over $11 million, and Georgetown Municipal related to direct water wastewater funding, we're going to receive just over $2 million. Of last year, staff recommended 3 alternatives to the Board of Commissioners for how we would use our direct $2 million allocation. And this project that I'm talking about today was one of the alternatives that we recommended to the board. The board voted unanimously to allocate our funding to the Northwest Bypass water line improvements. And that project matched our ARPA allocation, and it provided a number of benefits to our customers, both current and future. And mainly that project, the Northwest Bypass, it greatly benefited the proposed high school. And so we could do that project directly with that $2 million funding, and we don't have to search for additional dollars to put with it. However, we still have this project affecting the south part of the county on drinking water that we know we need to implement. So December, judge reached out to me. He said he's willing to explore this with the court, and obviously he's not committed, but I think that he believes, he knows, especially after we've already walked through it, it's worth your time to hear about it. So Judge, that fair take on where we are today?
100%, and we're giving information to the court for them to consider, and we have to look at things holistically, but without having this presentation, I don't think we can make that list as we go forward. So it's kind of like the first step on our budgeting project, or early step in our budgeting project for our upcoming budget cycle. So yes, that's 100% true.
So to start out, I'd like to make you all aware of what issues we're facing on the south side of the city and county. And it sounds like there's going to be some follow-up information after I'm done. And also what our plan is to address those issues. Currently, our customer demand, this is today, exceeds our supply of treated drinking water and our storage. Kentucky Division of Water, our state regulatory agency, they require that utilities maintain storage capacity equal to the average daily demand. And currently, our demand is around 4.2 million gallons per day. Related to production, we operate the water plant currently 24/7, and we still, on top of that production, we have to purchase water from Frankfurt Plant Board and Kentucky American Water Company to meet our average day demand. So that's the supply portion. Now the storage portion, our current storage with our elevated storage tanks that you see around the city, we have just over 2.5 million gallons within our elevated storage tanks. So as you can see, our daily demand is 4.2 million gallons per day. Our current storage capacity is 2.5 million gallons. So you can see that we have a shortage of both production, but a huge shortage on storage. In my opinion, the only reason that Division of Water has allowed us to get away with that for this long, that lack of storage, is because we have those connections with Frankfurt Plant Board and Kentucky American. Put it bluntly, I think that our current state related to water storage, it's dangerous and it has to be corrected. It's just the way we've operated for many years, but it needs to change. And as you know, we are currently conducting a supply assessment to identify the long-term supply needs. That effort's ongoing. At this point, though, we know that our future supply will not be Royal Spring. Royal Spring it's from where we are in the study, we know that Royal Spring can't sustain our long-term supply, our long-term source. So our source in the end is going to end up either the Kentucky River or the Ohio River. And that's really all we need to delve into the supply part. If we go down that road, that's a whole different category. But know that keep in the back of your mind that our long-term supply will be one of those two sources. We know we have these issues with storage, and we've had them for some time. We are also aware of the pressure issues in the system, especially, again, in the southern part of the city and county. Daily use pressure issues as well as fire protection issues in this area. These are well known from what I'm aware. When the county and city and utility historically have partnered to extend water service throughout the county over a number of decades, that infrastructure was installed for domestic service. And I don't know if, I can't really go into, I don't know the history well enough to know that what was guaranteed, but I can say that the line sizes throughout the county yield domestic service. I don't know that we can guarantee fire protection service just based on the line sizes. I'm saying all this to get to the point that we know we've got these pressure issues, especially on the southern part of the county. In particular, we're talking about Lancelot Estates and the Yarnleton area. So in our 2019 system assessment, that we identified a project to address the issues in that area. We budgeted for a new storage tank and a booster pump station in the southern part of the county to address the reliability and the fire flow protection needs. The project was scheduled to begin probably the planning and design in late 2023 or 2024. However, due to the current issues on our wastewater plant 1 upgrade and expansion project, I'm going to say that every other project within our capital program could be pushed back at this point. We still have to do all these projects. We're still going to do them. Just again, with the uncertainty of the plant 1 project, I at this point cannot promise a schedule for the rest of those projects. I have a map. Can you all see my mouse here kind of in the middle of the screen.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
We have a map, and what this map shows is our known problem areas in the vicinity. We've got Paynes Depot, US 62 here, running north to south. Here's the bypass. So we know that we have low pressure areas, 3 bad areas, 2 north of 64 on both the east and west side of Paynes Depot, and then 1 south of 64 where we provide service. We receive customer complaints related to pressure in this area all the time. General system information that's going to help you understand this project. By 2045, we know, and this is again from what we've learned so far through our study, that we're going to need somewhere between 7.5 and 10 million gallons of treated water per day and corresponding storage to meet that, to go with that demand. And I'm going to go and say that I think we're going to need 10 million gallons. I think if we plan on 7.5, we're going to be short-sighted and we're going to come up short for this planning cycle out to 2045. I think we're very much going to end up needing 10 million gallons a day. Currently, we can produce, as I said, about 4 million gallons a day, and we can store just over 2.5 million gallons with our current infrastructure. So you can see we need to increase our production and our storage we need to increase our storage by about 7.5 million gallons if we're going to have storage for that 10 million gallons by 2045. Keep those numbers in the back of your mind, please. How are we going to fix this when we don't yet know what our long-term supply is going to be? We've not yet finished our long-term supply assessment. This is the judge asked that others have asked. And so we're thinking about this project. We know we're going to need a new storage tank on the south side of the county, and that's going to have to be located in the vicinity of Paynes Depot and I-64. It's going to be in that corridor. At this location, we can receive water from either future source, whether it's the Kentucky River or the Ohio River. If we locate the tank in this area, we'll be able to utilize either one of those sources. So no matter what that future plan, how it pans out, this is the location that we need to look at. We also, with this location, with our current water supply, we can fill a tank from our existing system. So we build that tank today, we can fill it with our existing infrastructure with water from Royal Spring and our connection with Frankfort, Flint, Ward, and Kentucky American. We can utilize this tank, we can utilize this tank in any general location in this area. It doesn't have to be an exact high point in that area. The project, the tank and infrastructure, it's not intended to open up Paynes Depot as a new service area. That's not what this project's intended to do. I'm just saying that now because I know that's always a debated issue, and I've not received any direction that that's going to be opened up for full service, both water and sewer. This is just locating a tank in that area that can serve the current customers on the south side of the county. Project elements, this would be a new ground storage tank and a booster pump station. Elevated storage tanks are really not large enough, and they're not cost effective for the volume of water that we want to store in this area. So we're going to be looking at ground storage tanks in combination with a booster station to get the desired pressure we want. As I said, exact location, it's not critical. The tank does not have to be located at the high point because we're utilizing a booster pump station. The booster pump station is going to add the energy to the system. It gets us the pressure we need. With the tank and the booster pump station in combination, we're going to be able to raise the hydraulic
He froze.
upgrade. line and during this by about 20 psi. That's significant. That's a huge amount of pressure that our domestic customers are going to see. It's also going to help with fire flow protection. Excuse me. That's
Chase.
a direct benefit.
Chase, Rick has a direct question about this.
About the water pressure in the area that's affected. You know what it is now, the PSI, around about? I'm just wondering.
I don't know. I know it's lower than we'd like, but I'm happy to get a kind of an average for you, and I that to you.
Well, my thought process was the 20 PSI is probably a pretty good boost. Because I know.
Oh, it's a huge boost.
I was just kind of wondering where it was at now. That's all. Thanks.
I'm guessing that 20 PSI will likely double domestic water pressure for those customers, if not more.
Wow. Thanks.
Could I ask a question?
Alvin Lyons has a question, Chase.
While we're on that subject,
Yes,
what is considered a normal pressure? I mean, where's the cutoff between low pressure areas and high and acceptable? I've been getting complaints about the city of Stamping Ground having low pressure. I'm about 2 miles out, mine's fine, but in the city, I'm getting complaints.
So before you answer that, Chase, Alvin, Chad and I asked the same question when we had the small meeting. I said, now, I've had concerns from Stamping Ground, and Chad voiced the same thing, and I'm going to let Chase answer that because they had a project in the works to address that. So Chase, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Those are two great questions. First, what we try to have for all of our customers is 28 PSI at the meter. Obviously, that's going to decrease if you have a two-story home. We see problems with that where we have apartment complexes generally located in the city. Those third floors, we have trouble maintaining that level of pressure up as you go in elevation. But I know that, again, a number of places in the county don't get that goal of 28 PSI that we strive for. So related to, and let me say, that's affected by a number of issues. One is line size, and we've got a small diameter line running throughout the county, and other is just the hydraulic grade line of all of our elevated storage tanks. We just don't have enough elevation on those to provide the pressure that people want and need to have. Related to Stamping Ground, we do have a project that's currently, I think we're waiting on final permits. It's already been designed. We already have it a bid, and we're gonna essentially, since we took that system over, there's only been one change to that system. And before that change, it seemed like there were no complaints. And after that change, that's when we started getting complaints from customers as well as the fire department. So we're essentially, this project's going to put the system back exactly as it was when we took over the system. And hopefully that will get the pressures back to an acceptable level. So that's our current action for this to try to alleviate our issues that we're experiencing in Stamping Ground.
Is that a routing change or what kind of?
So when we took it over, there was a section of the line that created a loop in the system, and we always want to loop our water lines to keep pressure and turnover, and it had a number of leaks. So this one section, pretty small section, it was just removed. It was abandoned in place. I think it was just cut and capped on both ends. It removed a loop. I think it had some negative effect on the system. We're just putting that loop back in. And it's kind of downtown, the line that we're putting back in, it intersects the main street downtown in a north-south direction.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chase.
All right, anything else? Or are we ready to roll on into kind of our project scope?
I think we can move forward.
All right, remember, we need that additional storage capacity, 7.5 million gallons a day. By the time we get to 2045, we need about 1.5 million gallons additional storage today if we want to meet regulatory requirements. Again, I don't think we hear about that from Division of Water because we have the connections, but if we wanted to truly be in compliance, we'd need today an additional 1.5 million gallons. So what does this project involve? Option one, this would be our low-end cost estimate, and this would be to construct in phases 2.5 million gallon tanks, get us an additional 5 million gallons of storage to go with. That gets us to that 7.5 number. That's the low end. What I think we really need to pursue is an option two, which is more of the high end of our estimate. That would be to construct two 3.75 million gallon tanks, phases obviously, and as required. That gives us an additional 7.5 to go with our existing 2.5 million gallons of storage. So there we hit that 10 million gallons of storage we're going to need for our long-term storage needs. As I said, since we're doing this with multiple tanks, we can do it in phases. We can phase this in as the demand, as we see that demand. So today, if we started the project, we'd be looking at installing the first of two tanks with the volume either of 2.5 or 3.7 million gallons. Again, I think it's likely anything less than 3.7 million gallon tank, we're wasting our time. Phase one, we build this first tank of two. We utilize our existing mains in addition to a small run of new 24-inch main, and we can supply that tank. We can fill that tank from our existing network. At some point in the future, again, as the demand requires, the additional tank will be needed, and we'll construct that additional tank with new 30-inch main to fill the tanks, and that would require that new supply that I'm talking about that we're studying right now. Kentucky River, if that's the route we go, that would require additional treatment from Frankfurt Plant Board, where we would buy water wholesale from them, or it would require Georgetown Municipal to build, own, and operate a new tank with a source on the Kentucky. If we're talking about the Ohio, that would mean a pipeline. And as future growth and demand dictate the requirement for additional storage, we would add additional tank and mains in the area as well as ups. Kind of got that. I'm not going to down more into the weeds. You can read through that, but that's low levels we need to go there into that discussion as far as what. Here's what this would look like on the map. And again, you got the bypass, Haynes Depot Road. We would locate our tank. I've got it shown here, but again, this location, it's not crucial. It's not showing that here. Just this is a possible location. And again, because this is a ground storage tank, we're adding an elevation to get that hydraulic grade line raised, get our pressure boosted. We're doing that through the use of a booster station. So phase one of the project, that's what you see in pink. It would be the first tank and a minimal amount of 24-inch line that gets us to where we can tie to our existing system and fill this first tank from our existing system. Phase two is what you see in the green. That's where we would need to upsize some of these lines, some of the existing lines into town. And then future I'm showing in red is what we would need should we receive water from the more water from the Kentucky River or the Ohio River at some point in the future. Today's discussion, again, is really just for what's in pink here, minimal amount of transmission main and the first of 2 ground storage tanks. What's this going to cost? Because that's what we're here to discuss, as the judge said, is kind of budget planning, capital planning. And phase 1, option 1, that's for the first of the 2.5 million gallon tanks. We estimate that just for $4.5 million. Probably something that's not worth pursuing, because I think that tank is just not at phase 1, option 2. That's the 3.75 million gallon tank. We estimate that at just over 5.3 million. And we've got the map here. Again, it's showing the affected area of what this project would improve. But we're going to talk about that more in just a minute.
Chase, can I?
Yep.
Can I? At our previous meeting, you also shared a map that had the number of customers impacted in the pink, and then also a number of customers that would be directly impacted off of Lemons Mill Road, specifically Sutton Place, I believe. If I recall correctly, that number was 1,156 customers. In the pink that is showing right now, that was 544 customers. So that you combine those two, this project could impact 1,700 plus customers. Is that right?
Judge, thanks a lot. You just stole all my thunder for.
Sorry, I just didn't see it. He's frozen again.
You frozen now.
And then we'll get to the benefit, why we want to consider it. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Could I ask a question? For you?
Alvin has a question.
On your cost estimates, you
Yes,
don't have anything for property acquisition. I mean, you got to have a site to place these on. How big of an area are you going to need to acquire? It's not shown in the cost estimates.
I think we've got our. That's why we've got 10% contingency, but no, we do not have that shown. And before we really know the size of the tanks that we're going to do, it's hard to estimate the acreage that we're going to need, but that would be part of it. And that's why we've got a pretty healthy contingency in there. But yes, property acquisition will be absolute key to this project on how we negotiate that cost and the location. But I can look into that. We can get you some information on at least acreage that we think we would need. That's a great question, and I apologize that's not included in the presentation, but we'll get you that information.
And Chase, you discussed that we already own right of way in this general area alongside the road, pretty much 264. Is that correct?
Judge, I'd have to check. I don't recall.
I just we do. I think we do, and I think you mentioned that, but I won't hold you to it, and we'll add that later to. Go ahead.
Well, I'll make a note to look into that, and it looks like that's kind of just something that I really should have had in here and didn't. But I will get you, Judge. I'll get you some information on an estimate of the acreage we would need and where, if we already own some easement or right of way, where that would be, and if it's feasible to locate a tank there.
Yes, sir.
Chase, let me add something for the court. So if you all have been on Bluegrass Parkway coming in to Versailles Road, and if you look over on the left, you see those big towers. That's kind of what they're envisioning it to look like. Not the tall towers that we have currently. Just so I can give you a schematic of maybe what it would look like. They're not as tall as the towers we have now, but there are multiple ones and smaller. So. And the other part of this too is that what they have on there as far as the destination, that is not completely, it could be in that area. It's not that they haven't cherry-picked that place to be the exact location, and it could be someplace in that area.
Can I ask a quick? Hey,
David
Jay,
Livingston.
This is David Livingston. So it says on there, this is for current capacity and not planning for future expansion. How long based on our growth, would you anticipate this would be acceptable?
That's difficult to answer. It's really based on our what our customer growth is going to be, and we're looking at that in detail on our supply assessment. We've already done some work because we had to look at customer demand when we were doing the wastewater project. We had to look at population projections, growth. As far as when we would need, if the question I think is getting to when would we need to do phase 2, when are we going to need to build the second tank? And it's hard to answer that question. I'll make a note to look into that and can get you an answer on that as well. I'd need to check some of the data from some of our reports, but I think that if we were to build a 3.7 million gallon tank today, that's going to provide us the service we need for a number of years. At least my guess is out through 2027, 2030. And then the second tank is my guess is going to be phased in sometime after 2030. But I'd need to get you some more detailed information on that.
That answers, that's good enough. That'll be fine.
Okay. We do know, again, our supply study is going on concurrently. It's unfortunately not complete yet, and it's long overdue. But some of the things that we do know, again, is that 2045 demand, we do know that. We're confident that that's going to be again, that our current state of our water treatment plant at Royal Spring, plus our existing connections with Kentucky American and Frankfurt Plant Board, we know for a fact that those connections, that current state, that will no longer be able to supply our customer demand by the year 2027. That's a hard date to look at. That's a hard date. That's why we're doing this supply assessment today. That's why I'm talking to the board now, the city council now. That's why I'm telling you all about it today, is that we know that 2027, we will have had to implement system changes, because we know by that date, we don't have enough water, Judge, and that's why we're doing this supply assessment.
Can I Chase? This is David Livingston again. I wanted to ask you one other question, and this is outside of this area. With the development going along the bypass over by Bradford Place, Kroger, on over near Creekside Elementary, what about capacity there? Are we good there, or are we going to be looking at needing to do, or are you guys going to be needing to look at doing something in the very near future?
Let me go another, I think it's here. This is going to help a lot. Leading me right into my next slide. So, as the judge alluded to, and this was added, I don't know if this was added to the presentation before it was sent to the judge earlier this week or last week, but adding this storage tank, we believe that it's going to affect the pressure zone, everything inside of this pink magenta line. And currently within that boundary, we have 544 customers. And we think that that's going to improve all of their pressure at every connection. We also think, again, because when you're talking about pressure and elevation, the horizontal distance really isn't as much of a factor. It's all about elevation or energy you're adding to the system to get your pressure up. once we tie in our 16-inch main over here on the southeast portion of the bypass, there's one gap that's remaining. It's in the vicinity of the 99-acre Bryn Gardner property. That's the last gap with this project. And when we eventually get that 16-inch main tied in, you can see that this storage tank will affect, I think, everything on the south side of the county, even going over here to the east part where you've got the Anderson Communities Development, Emerson, Sutton Place, the school, Southland Christian. All of those properties will be positively impacted by this project. When I first looked at that kind of stunned me that the far reaches of this one project, how horizontally in space it will, how many areas that it will affect. But we do know via what modeling we've already done, adding this storage and this energy to the system here, it will affect everything on the south side of the city, even over to this area where we have known pressure issues as well. That's more within the city limits, but we know we have pressure issues here, especially in Sutton Place. A tank located right here, we add energy to the system, create that raised pressure zone. It's gonna fan out all the way to this part of the system. Then when we add that last piece of the 16-inch main along the bypass, which I think will happen sooner rather than later, I think everything along the southern part of the bypass and south in the county, I think everything's going to be positively impacted. And so, as the judge alluded to, you've got the 544 customers in this area, larger area, but obviously more spread out. This is a much more dense customer area. You add those numbers up, you've got about 1,700 customers that could be positively impacted by this project. Judge, is that what you were alluding to?
David, did that answer your question?
Yes.
And absolutely. And I'm going to say it again, and you've said it, but what we're talking about is storing treated water. And
Correct.
And it's either going to come from two sources, and that's yet to be determined. But you are actively investigating all options to meet our needs into the far future. That's about the best way to say it.
All correct. All
Chase?
correct, and we think we can utilize this infrastructure regardless of what source we pursue.
Yes, sir. Dwayne Ellison and Tim Thompson both have questions.
Hey, Chase, when is the decision going to be made on which source you choose? What's your timeline there? And is that a board decision? Is that who decides that?
Timeline, we received the draft final report mid-December, and we submitted comments back to our consultant in early January. They're working currently to address those. And so I hope that we have a finalized report with a strong recommendation sometime this month. However, I'm not going to promise that because this thing's so far overdue. Every time I think we're going to have it, I get surprised. So all I can say is we are actively working on it. It's one of our top priorities. And I think that our long-term water needs, while I think the first approval will absolutely come from the Board of Commissioners, I think that pursuit of a long-term source is going to have to extend to entire community. We're going to have involvement, input from the entire community. I think that goes to the court, that goes to the city council. But as I said, I think it starts at the board level.
There's still more questions that have to be answered, and trying to do due diligence and look at all options. I think that's the best way to say it. Tim Thompson has a question.
It's if I Mr. Magistrate Thompson, if you let me just pause 1 second.
Yes, sir.
The magnitude of the decision of which source which water supply we're gonna pursue for our long-term demands I don't know of a more important, larger decision that will face all of the community leaders, decision makers. I'm not sure if there's a larger decision that everyone will be facing, and I think that's at the board, the court, and the council.
Gotcha. Appreciate it.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Just real quick, this is Tim Thompson. I know you and I have had several conversations about hydrants, pressure, all that in the past, just in general. I was glad to hear about Anderson Communities. I know that's been more of the issues that we've kind of dealt with, even though it's a newer area. Just with the elevation of the tank that you have now, it's just not giving the pressure that we need. So I like this because it's affecting the city folks and the county folks. We're all the same, but I guess the biggest question I got is, I know that this is going to improve drinking water pressure and all that, shower pressures, but what are we looking at as far as hydrant pressure? And right now, in Chief Canavy, we're looking at red tops at best out there. And for you guys, if you look at a fire hydrant, based on the color of the top of it, it's how much gallons per minute you got. Treetop, those areas, we don't have hardly any pressure. Is this going to be a substantial increase in that? And with that, would this be an availability after this is complete to be able to add additional hydrants in some of the county areas?
I absolutely think we can improve on all of those, on both the issues that you just raised. What pressure you're going to have at the hydrants, and can you add additional? And I absolutely think we can improve on both those situations. I think as far as giving you pressures, we need to just sit down and look at our model that we sat down just recently with Chief Colston, and we just need to look at specific locations for me to give you exactly what we think, where and by what magnitude we can increase fire flow pressure. And it's also, it's something that we've got to look at, that when we're considering fire flow pressure, it's different from domestic pressure in that you've got a pressure at a hydrant, but part of that fire flow demand is also if you got to go out there and hook up to a truck to put out a fire, not only do you need to have the pressure, but we're also trying to maintain service, domestic service to all the surrounding homes. So if you're putting out a fire, not everybody's losing all water pressure. That's a pretty difficult demand for us to meet, especially with the size of lines that are placed throughout the county. But I do think we will improve our pressure at the hydrants. I think if we want to look at specific locations, we absolutely are in the position to do that now that we've developed a hydraulic model, and it's just sitting down and taking a look at that. I don't have specific numbers for specific hydrants today.
Yeah, this is huge, Chief, just simply for the fact of, I mean, the county used to be very, very rural. Now, I mean, you're very densely populated, a lot of roads, and you can go miles without a hydrant. I think the nearest one off of Biddle Lane and that, what's that one, Malibu Canyon or whatever it is, it's like 2 miles from Station 1. The county Station 1 is the nearest fire hydrant. So this is very important. Houses are getting bigger, and the shuttle operations, it's tougher and tougher. So
I think this would be a perfect time to hear from Assistant Chief Canavy as well. Kelly Corman has a question.
And if you're done with your presentation, and I just want to ask this before we get further along.
Sure.
Okay, so first of all, that's a great presentation, and I don't study water distribution systems, and I really appreciate all the good information and feel like I understand the need. The question I have is some of the areas now that are maybe underserved or don't have enough pressure or storage, is it a possibility that those customers could potentially be sold to maybe another Kentucky American or somebody that could come in now that has lines in that area that could give them a better service than what they have now? And once again, I'm pleading ignorance because I've never looked into this and don't know how that process even works, but just the question.
It's a great question. Let me think about. In particular, within Scott County, and there's no agreement that documents this on paper. Anything east of I-70, 65 north is Kentucky American's service area. And then they've moved over as well into areas like Lanes Run Business Park on the northeast part of the city and county. They do have some pockets of service areas, but generally we stick to our area west of the interstate, and they stick to theirs. Every once in a while, they will call, or customer will call and say, "Hey, I can get better pressure now if Kentucky American can offer it." We generally sit down with Kentucky American and figure out what's the best plan. We do try to maintain our own service areas, theirs and ours. There are small areas, and we try not to stop that from happening. But that's really determined on a case-by-case basis. Are we just going to say that we're going to give up a huge chunk of our service area? No, we're not going to. But that's probably the best I can answer that question. It really is a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
Can I tag along to his question? But I'm going to make a comment.
Sure.
I don't. That's not a. That's a great question. But the only thing I worry about with the utility is that Kentucky American is a for-profit company, and if they're losing money somewhere else, they're going to come search and find it from our customers. And if I worry about them having focus in other areas, whereas GMWSS just focuses here. So that goes back to the importance of, and this has nothing to do with the water, that goes back to the importance of appointing good board members to GMWSS, appointing good board members to P&Z, to the Board of Adjustments, to all of those non-elected boards, because they're really not accountable to the constituents as we are or as city council is. So as we go through, you don't want to appoint somebody that is completely unfamiliar with these type of things. So I think that goes back around to where we make good board appointments so that they can go through. Bill Burke was a great board member for GMWSS.
Hear, hear.
That guy dove into it probably deeper than any board member I've ever seen. And so appointing good people like that is very important and helps to make sure that the water company is going in the right direction.
Jim?
I think, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Chase. You finish, and then Jim Canavy's going to share.
Okay, I wanted to say that, just to follow up on that question, I think that the supply assessment is probably the much more appropriate place to talk about whether there is a long-term partnership with Kentucky American or Frankfurt Plant Board or anybody else. We're talking to Louisville Water Company, or whether we're just going to build our own new plant with the source on the Kentucky. Those are the things that we're studying, and those are questions as far as if we want to partner with another utility, who's that utility going to be, and what does that relationship look like? And those are all questions that are really driving that study and that analysis. And as you said, some concerns expressed just a minute ago, those are absolutely things that we all have to be thinking about. As I said, again, the magnitude of our long-term supply study and the decisions that come out of it. I can't express the magnitude of which we've got to really think that through and think about our supply and our relationships and what kind of relationships we're looking for. So let me just run through, I think I got one more slide here. Again, big time advantages on this project. We've got the increased I think it's going to have the potential to positively impact. Price tag, but asked me to look at it because in these dollars, I really respect how he's saying it. How do we benefit the most people? Project, it's tough to beat. Obviously, lobbying in the interest of Georgetown Municipal, but I think that this we really get a lot of bang for our buck with this project. It goes in with whatever we want to decide for our future supply. We can utilize this infrastructure. We're not building something that we make a decision, this year, next year, and then, oh, this is obsolete. This will be utilized no matter which way we go. It allows for continued development, which seems that the city has fostered. It just a number of advantages. The biggest one that I've already discussed is how many people I think that can positively affect. Disadvantages, this has changed a little bit since I first met with Judge and Magistrate Wallace and presented this. We talked about it. This is going to require property acquisition. That's never easy. So we've got to think about that. Initially, if you'd asked me back in September, I would have said this is something that I would propose as a partnership between Georgetown Municipal and the Fiscal Court, possibly the city, if they would want to become a partner in this project. Unfortunately, today, again, with the uncertainty of wastewater plant 1, I don't know, I can't say with any certainty that Georgetown Municipal can pursue this project as far as contributing dollars. I don't know that we can do that anytime in the near future. So, Judge, that was something that Les and I talked about after our meeting. I don't know. I think that if the court wants to consider this, if they think it's worthy of spending their dollars, just to put it bluntly, I don't know that there's going to be a match for a Georgetown Municipal contribution at this time. Not because we don't want to, not because we shouldn't. Again, we created a project in our capital program. I don't know with the uncertainty of the cost of the treatment plant. I just don't know that we're going to be able to put priority on this to do this sooner rather than later. So that's tough for me to say, but if you all want to consider that, I want you to know the facts. I want you to know where we stand. You should probably be considering this as a fiscal court project. I don't know that Georgetown Municipal is going to be able, at least within the next few years, to put money toward this.
Chase, 3 weeks ago, we got to the end of this presentation, and you know me, I just said, well, let's cut to the chase. And, what's it going to take to get this done, and where could the money come from? And at that time, I think you mentioned the possibility of GMWSS with a $2 million consideration on the project and needing to find 3.3. So when we left that meeting, that was what, and still till just now, that was what I understood was on the table, so to speak. With that said, we also talked about, pursuing federal infrastructure dollars, either on the federal level or on the state level, to offset local costs. And I think we'd be not doing our due diligence if we didn't do that, because it's my understanding that those dollars are going to be there. And a project like this, you would think, would be low-hanging fruit for that type of project. It impacts a lot of people, yada, yada, yada. So I just wanted to lay that out and make sure everybody at the court understands that's where we were 3 weeks ago. And please know, your situation with wastewater treatment 1 is a fluid and ever-changing situation. We respect that. We understand that, and have no, I understand that. So,
Chase, how long does
Judge,
I'm sorry, how long, let's say everything got approved, how long does a project like this even take?
I'm gonna say design, planning and design and permitting somewhere between 6 and 12 months, and then construction process probably 12 to 18 months.
Okay. Thank you.
And Judge, just to follow up, you're 100% correct. At our meeting in December, the 2 million contribution, that is what we have budgeted, that 2 million, and it's within our capital program to start in, I think, calendar year 2024. Again, we don't have that funding today. That's what we budgeted in 2019. You can see how those numbers have jumped astronomically between 2019 and today. Part of that because what I presented here is it is a larger project than what we anticipated in 2019. But again, that spend was scheduled for 2024, and again, I would have said even back before September, we would have figured out a way, or we would have tried our best to look at a way to move that project up in our capital program. I'm very, very upset at because of the situation at Flint 1, how it could negatively impact everything else in our capital program. And unfortunately, that's just beyond my control right now. I want to get back to the capital program and keep it on schedule as best as we can. But again, since our December meeting, that has been discussed with staff. I've discussed that with Les, with the mayor, and I just don't know that I can promise at least that $2 million today. It would have been hard because, again, it's not budgeted until 2024. But I don't know that it's going to be feasible for us to move up as unfortunate as the circumstances are with Plant 1. So that being the first part to address what you said. Second part is, can we pursue state and federal money to help with funding this project? Absolutely, and we will pursue that as adamantly as we can. I think that would be a great project to pursue funding, especially if there's a willing match from ARPA money. But that's just where we are today.
Well, I would certainly respect that. Now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask Assistant Chief Canavy to share, and then we'll allow any of our court members to ask any other questions, and then you have a final, anything else you want to share, and then we'll turn you loose. Jim's been standing there patiently. Go ahead, Jim.
Of course, thank you, and Judge Sainz. Judge Covington asked me to come. We've had a long-standing issue with water problems out on Ironwood Pike. I know your presentation, even with your tank and the booster, is going to help just that area, but it goes all the way out to Ironwood Pike. It goes all the way to Frankfurt End. You get out to Rocky Waters Way, which is a new subdivision off there that is in Georgetown Waters. There's not even a fire hydrant put in there.
What's happening to my man?
1.5 to 2 miles of road, and there's no fire hydrants in the subdivision at all with $350,000 homes. I understand you're talking pressure, and pressure is important.
Hey, your mic's off.
Hear any of that?
Could you repeat that?
Hope that was script, because I want to hear the same exact.
Don't worry, he don't have any memory.
I wrote it down.
Sorry, everybody.
Better? Can you hear me now?
We can.
Put it a little closer, Jim.
Sir, can you hear me?
I can't, I don't know if it's off.
Amen.
Chase, can you hear Jim Canavy?
Just barely.
Do you want to stand right here, Jim,
Is that better?
for my next song?
All right.
Is that better? Can you hear me now? You don't have to see me. Yes, no?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
All right, sir. Again, I appreciate it. Judge coming in Fiscal Court. Thanks for having me. reason I was here was Judge Covington has talked to me about future incidents or prior incidents that occurred in that end of the county for fire-related incidents. This has been an ongoing issue for several years that I understand Georgetown Water is there. They supply the area there, and your new map with pressure, I understand, will put these things in, will the pressure there. But in fire service, we also need gallons per minute. You're talking about the area just right outside of Lancelot's Estates, but you service all the way down Ironwork Pike. There's a new subdivision, Rocky Water Way, that doesn't even have a fire hydrant in it, that is maintained by Georgetown Water. The supply line is only 3 inch. I understand that Georgetown Water has a obligation within the city limits to provide fire protection, and they don't have that in the county. All they have to provide is drinking water. And that seems to be the holdup to where we get to these issues. I understand the pressure will increase water flow and fire protection in Lancelot in that direct area there. But what about the rest of Ironworks Estates, Midway Road, all the way down to Franklin Pike? Because right now we don't have any fire protection there, and I know Magistrate Thompson talked about how far we have to drive. You have $350,000 to $500,000 homes that don't have any real fire protection. We're going to tank in all our water for those fires. And to give you a general idea, you're talking about pressure, but GPMs is what puts out fire. A 3,000 square foot house means if it's fully involved or halfway involved, requires 1,000 gallons a minute of water supply. So as that 1,000 gallons a minute and multiplies with how long it burns, eventually, yes, it will burn out. And that's what we're running into. Is we have to have the supply to extinguish fire. If half of that 3,000 square foot house is on fire, we need 500 gallons per minute. And you have to understand that there's no calculation to do that. So I want you all to understand where pressure is great, but the smaller the line, the higher the pressure. The bigger the line, lower pressure, but more volume. So we need both.
And that, I know what David Livingston's going to say, but I'm going to let him say it after I say it. This is an issue that needs to be addressed with planning and zoning. And how we have a 3-inch line going in and no fire hydrants, it's something that I would like to personally make sure that we address on this comp plan revision. And Dwayne Ellison and Rick Hostetler are joining me on that group. There's 16 people. I'll let David Livingston now have the floor.
I've spent obviously way too much time around the judge if he's already knowing what I'm going to say. I mean, I was going to say, a rhetorical question. You said that's obviously the responsibility of GMWSS, but I think it's more the responsibility of planning and zoning, because if planning and zoning knows there's a 3-inch line out there, why are we building houses? Why? There should be a scenario where you cannot fight a fire appropriately in that area without gallons per minute and PSI, and why are we developing in areas, or why are they allowing the development knowing that that's there? That goes back to and I'm not going to ask Chase to answer this in a public meeting, but is this a scenario that is dire enough that you go pause on development until we can catch up?
Jim?
I'm not asking you to answer that question either. That's just a question to put out there.
I've been dealing with this for over 10 years. When the judge 2 years ago, it's a county problem, it's not a county problem.
Right.
And that was the best way me and him had many long conversations about fire protection in different areas of the county. I keep getting told that, again, anything inside the city limits, they have to be able to run. We don't have that agreement. When they develop certain developments, and I'm not going to say which ones, people go out of their way to get letters from Georgetown Water saying that they can't supply the fire hydrants even if they're there, so you don't have to put them in. That is past practice. So when you do that, and they don't have to put a large enough supply line in when they originally developed it, it limits it, because even if we do get the supply line, even if we do get the supply and the pressure, they're not going to come back and dig up all the water lines to put the spot in the minimum standard for NFPA is a 6-inch water.
So I don't know if you know this, but what's their PC rating out there?
I'd have to.
Is it a 9? It should be a 9.
Maybe not. But here's the thing.
You talking about ISO rating?
You
Yes.
have people that are buying houses that think they have fire protection. A lower rate fire protection, they have fire protection, but a lower rate what they are, and they don't.
Right.
Because the
I'm shocked that any insurance carrier would even insure a home in that scenario.
The Rocky Waters, they have 2, what we call cleanouts, that people consider those fire hydrants, but they're not. They're 1.5 or 2-inch line that just flush the water. Moore's Mill Road, we just had a fire Christmas Day at a large barn with some racehorses in it.
Yeah.
No fire. There's a cleanout across the street that's listed as a fire hydrant, but it does not produce enough volume of water.
That's like a garden hose, essentially.
So along those lines, Jim, thank you very much for sharing, what impacts your service daily. And, I've had many conversations with Chase about this. Chase is director of GMWSS and focuses on trying to make an impact in all the county, but it goes back to you've only got so much to deal with, and you got to pick that low-hanging fruit. When I talked about this issue that's out on the Ironworks corridor, and then, kind of planted this seed with Chase that we would be, we wanted to explore opportunities to try to help our community. This is how we've gotten to this point. I don't think this answers all our questions, and I'm not the expert. And what it sounds like to me is we need another elevated tank down Ironworks, and then we need larger lines, and we need planning and zoning to help change those requirements that no matter what, you got to have a 6-inch line to feed up, even if it's 10 houses.
You could come back and put the fire hydrant in with the lines.
Yeah.
The problem we have is where
The line.
and I say we need to, or allow him to build subdivisions.
Yeah.
That's one of the large homes in there.
So,
Putting infrastructure in prior to them building. And I agree with you. And I said, me and you have had numerous conversations about that.
so
And anything, if the water company with the supply will help certain
Yeah.
areas. But I also want you all to realize that we have.
this is not a magic wand that answers all the questions. But when this was presented, my eyes got, I said, wow, we can maybe make a big impact on a lot of homes and move in the right direction. So the Band-Aid's kind of ripped off. We know the issue, so let's find a way to fix it. And, that'll be our task. Thank you very much. You have anything else you want to add?
Like I said, I appreciate your time. I know, like I said, I know you've been working on it for the last 2 years. And
Yeah.
I know you were talking 2 years ago with them about the water tanks. And it's going to improve that section. But like I said, I just want to realize.
No.
Can I ask a real quick question?
David Livingston.
I'm not shifting blame or anything like that, but a lot of this of what I've heard today is the first time I've ever heard it because we don't normally work directly with GMWSS, and when these developments are passed in P&Z, we don't see that. So, I'm not as Kelly was saying, I'm not a water engineer or whatever the title might be called, so I would not know to look for these things. You rely on other people to make sure that we're getting everything done correctly.
I understand. Tim Thompson.
Just real quick, I agree with everything that Chief Canavia said. The biggest, I guess the question that I have, planning and zoning is going to do what's on the books. So if it says in there that they don't have to provide per Georgetown Municipal Water and Sewer Service, if it's not required to provide fire protection services, that's what they're going to do. Now, who has that authority to change that? That's where it all starts, because they're going to continue doing that just simply because that's what's there. They're following the ordinance, I guess, and whatever that you.
So Tim, I will make a point to meet with Joe Kane.
Okay.
And ask specifically, and any member on the court that might want to add to that or try to answer that, but I don't have the answer right now, but I'll get it from Joe to answer that specifically.
Okay.
Rick Hostetler.
Just to tag on with David, or two things, but with David, we've had these discussions multiple times, how it works between planning and zoning, and my view's always been, and this kind of opens it up, I think. My view's always been that the developer has got to be the one, and then everybody says, well, the price of the home will go up. It will only happen to what the customer will pay. So, I mean, because we're talking about GMWSS owning these water lines, and that was going to be another question. I know Kentucky Americans in Scott County, and GMWSS is providing water and sewer service in Scott County, but what about, are there any other water sources coming into the county from maybe Owen County? I don't know.
Only two that I'm aware of. Chase, is that correct?
Again, the two main providers, Kentucky American and Georgetown Municipal, we obviously purchase water from Frankfurt Plant Board as well, but they don't operate or have any direct customers other than us.
Right.
It's a wholesale arrangement.
Right. So I think the planning and zoning side of things we need to look at, and this kind of highlights it, one area. The other thing was, I'm going to go all the way back to Kelly's statement. I know GMWSS, I understand how they're operating. I happen to be a Kentucky American customer. They are on the west side, by the way, of I-75. So I know that most of what they do is on the east side, but they are on the west side because that's where I'm at. But that's still something to look at. I know you're drawing off of Frankfurt Water Board. And you talked very early on in your presentation about a potential line from either the Kentucky River or did you say Ohio River, Chase?
Yes, sir.
Has that been built? That's been something that's been talked about, but that's not built, is it? Or am I wrong about that?
No, sir. No, sir, it is not.
But if one of those lines were to be built, would that be GMWSS wanting to build that line? Is that?
First, we have to select, again, this is a major effort. We have to select the future supply, and then how that deal is structured, whether it's Georgetown Municipal owned, whether it's jointly owned, or whether somebody else owns it and we're just purchasing water through it wholesale. Those are all future details to be ironed out.
Well, I know those were discussions ever since I've been on the court, but I don't want to get that far off. But still, going back to what our topic is, it's a major improvement for a number of homes, and it'll give opportunity to even stretch out over time, possibly. Obviously, increasing the line size is what it's going to take, because that's where you get your volume and you get your pressure by building the tanks and the pumping stations. So, it's all positive.
Chase, let me say before, I appreciate what you do and I appreciate the presentation. And we understand that there is a lot of moving pieces to what you all are trying to do right now. A lot of moving pieces. And the reality is our community is growing, and what you shared was by 2040, we're going to need $10 million. 10 million gallons a day of treated water. That's correct, right? Estimated 10 million. Right now, our low average is 2.5 million. Or thereabouts. Is that correct?
Well, we can produce right around 4 million gallons a day.
Okay.
And then we can additional, and we have to every day already buy from Frankfurt Plant Board, and then we even supplement that with Kentucky American.
But our average, just saying our average use, how many million gallons per day right now?
4.2.
4.2. So we've got to go to 10.
Yes,
or be ready. And I do not want to be here in our community and not have our community. There's nothing more important than drinking water. And I applaud what you're doing looking down the road now. And how many months have you been on this job?
Coming right up on 4 years, which I can't believe. I feel like it's been 4 months.
But it's not been very long, and you're tackling a lot of things, and we certainly respect that. And the point of why we're here today is how can we collaborate and look at projects that will help our whole community. And I know that the court has to look at a holistic approach at all the different things we have, but I can't think of drinking water. There's not a lot of things higher on the list. Do you have anything else you want to share? And then, I know that I think our next thing is, when there's information released about grant opportunities this spring, which I know will have to be the case, then can we meet again to look at how to pursue that most efficiently? And then is there anything else anyone on the court wants to ask Chase? Okay, Chase, go ahead if you have anything else.
If I could just add, I've heard and I take very seriously all of the concerns that all of the fire departments have brought to my attention. That's City of Georgetown, the county fire department, as I've heard from Stamping Ground, Mayor Murphy, and we take every one of those issues very seriously. That's a nightmare scenario that a house is on fire and you all don't, and that they don't have a hydrant, or they open a hydrant and they suck it dry in a matter of seconds. And unfortunately, that within parts of the county, that is the case. I don't know. I've done some research. I don't know the history on what the expectation was when the utility and the county partnered to extend service throughout the county. I don't know what that arrangement was. If there's a written agreement, if there's a responsibility that the utility needs to meet, we're going to do it. However, I can just say, again, not knowing the history and not seeing, the documentation of what was expected, I can just say I can look at those line sizes that extend out through the county, and what the fire departments have said is absolutely true. There's no way they can fight a fire. Garden hose would be, in some area, would probably be good. I mean, you're talking about a straw, really, and I hear that, and I will say that in addition to this project, we have some other water line projects, again, to create loops, to improve areas on the south part of the county that I think we just heard about. This is not the only project we're pursuing, but when we did our system assessment, please keep in mind, when we did our system assessment in 2019, we had not increased rates in 12 years. That's great for ratepayers, and that's commendable. However, there's a cost to that. And when we looked in 2019, we did a system-wide sanitary, sewer, and drinking water assessment. We found 83 projects. We actually found over 100 projects that we needed to do. We trimmed it down to 83, and we put it into a 5-year capital program. We are in the reality that we cannot afford to do all these projects at once, and adjusting rates in a manner that we could even try attempt to tackle these 83 projects that all had a serious consequence if we do not build these projects or we don't do this rehab. We had to weigh all of that, and every one of those projects had a consequence. Could be fire pressure, could be reliability, but please keep in mind that we had to balance with a first rate increase that we phased over 5 years. We're in year 3. If we wanted to address every one of these problems that we all know about, especially the ones that the fire departments have made us aware of, that first year rate increase was, it would have been astronomical. We had to figure out a way to phase these in to make them affordable. Is there more work to be done? Absolutely. Is there things that I'd like to have done yesterday? Absolutely. And we're doing our very best to try to fix a lot of problems. I think we have a good plan. Again, if somebody can sit down and point to me truly what commitments we need to honor related to system pressures within the county, I've done some research. I've really not found a lot, but I want to make sure that the utility is meeting our obligations. And even if it's not a written obligation for maintaining fire pressure, so the fire departments can put out a fire in any part of the city and county, that's absolutely something worth pursuing, and we want to do that. So again, I'm open to sitting down with anybody that wants to discuss those issues, look at our water model, see where the worst issues are. Clearly, the fire departments know, and we'll do our best to solve the problems. And I think this project that we've talked about today, I think it's a really good first step.
No, I agree, and I appreciate all you do, and we understand that there's a lot of moving pieces and a lot of things going on, and you're addressing the biggest needs and trying to, 83 projects is a lot, and we appreciate it. And you can't fix anything if you don't talk about it and identify it, and I think that's what we're doing. And I think our job is to try to work collaboratively to try to address them. Once the toothpaste is out of the tube, you can't put it back in. And, whatever, I don't know what the agreement was when the lines were put in, but the issue is now that the lines are not meeting the needs that we feel like are appropriate. So how do we move forward and propose solutions as we move forward? And there's so many things going on. So please know that we value your partnership and we value what you're doing, and look forward to continue to working on things. Anything else, and I'll
Likewise.
Turn you loose. Thank you.
I just have one quick.
Tim Thompson, one more.
Just one quick comment, Chase. Worked with you the last 4 years. I just want to thank you for everything that you've done. You've been very, very, very proactive. And so any of these comments that we've addressed, or Chief Canavy's addressed, Stamping Ground's addressed, it's no reflection on you. You're being proactive, and honestly, it's time for us to be proactive moving forward, figuring out what we need to do. So thank you for you've done a tremendous job, and any time that we've had questions with fire pressure or anything like that, you have been amazing. So thank you for what you do.
All right. Thank you,
Appreciate
Chase.
it.
Just
Alvin?
Just a comment, having grown up with a cistern where we had to have water trucked in,
Yeah.
when those lines were put out there, they didn't care how big they were. As long as they got water to the house, they were happy. So
Yeah.
there's a reason that, we're looking at more things now than they were then. I mean, it was, you watched every drop back then.
Yeah.
I would like to have one thing. I know Pastor Hostetler said, they put it on the developer, all that. The thing you all have to remember is, if we put water supply lines in, we put fire hydrants in, when they're developing these, their insurance rates for the people, yeah, their house may go up a little bit in cost, but over a long period of time, their insurance rates are gonna drop. They're gonna get that money back tenfold compared to what it was initially. And that's one of my arguments on that is, you have, it may cause your house to go up an extra $5,000, but what are you gonna bring that back with the fire hydrant there over a long period of time for 20 years?
Yeah, if you go from a PC9 to a PC5 or 6.
Or three.
Or three.
So
It's huge.
It's huge, and you do that for 20 years, that's just something to keep in mind. And I thank you for your time and
No.
what's going on.
Thank you. Thank you all. With that said, we'll move to Jeff Mudrack and myself. Just want to, Jeff shared an emergency closures policy yesterday. I think it's something that I'd like to present on Thursday for your all's consideration. It just gives a structure, and there's no more ifs, ands, or buts. It's in black and white, and the courts approved it. This is pretty much taken from the Kentucky League of Cities as a model policy. I think some staff shared with me as well that Oldham County has similar policies. And then I think the governor was actually talking about he was asked this similar question about compensation when you have an emergency closure, and he shared that they'd be working on a similar policy. So, Jeff, you'd like to add anything?
I really don't have anything to add except for the fact that we try to model this after what a lot of organizations do, and it addresses what happens when you have a closure, when you have an early departure, an early arrival, and also if you don't close and people still can't come to work, then how do you handle those situations? So I think we try to cover all the different elements that you might have to deal with.
And I'm always going to, work with JR and try to, safety. We don't want our staff to risk their lives to get to work, but we want to be smart and still provide a, service. And today, I think today's a perfect example. We had a delay, 10 o'clock. Roads weren't perfect, but were they good enough for folks to take their time and get into work and do so? I think 100%. So what questions or comments would anybody have about that proposal? Nothing. All right. We'll bring it back on Thursday. Just looking at our meeting that will be on Thursday morning, not Friday. That's a reminder. We'll be talking about the lease renewal with the Central Kentucky Growers Group, and then also with the ordinance first reading consideration for the leaf and barrel zone change that's been proposed. So we'll have that on the agenda as well.
Talking about the 10th, right?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Be the 10th
This coming Thursday. We changed to Thursday at 9 a.m. the 10th instead of the 11th. Any other questions or business does anyone have?
I only had two, same topic, but, we've got all that land for the reservoir. It's obviously we're not going to go that route. It probably needs to be on our radar to do something with it. I don't know what that is.
So let me share. I agree 1,000%. We started the conversation with the water needs assessment when we had a flash drought in 19. I went to Chase and said, what's our long-term plans for water? Because I don't know if y'all remember, the water it had odor, taste wasn't good. The Kentucky River is not drought proof. We bought the 1,400 and some acres that the county now owns that was slotted to build that reservoir with the mind in that would help our water needs into the future. I then asked Chase to do this assessment that would give us data showing where would be the best place for us to put money to help with water in the future. It hadn't been finalized, but I can tell you preliminarily, and 99.5%, us trying to pursue with the Corps of Engineers and build a reservoir on those acres is a dead issue. It would not make good physical sense because being able to build that size reservoir wouldn't even be a drop in the bucket in future needs.
In a drought, that's right.
In a drought as well. So what we need to do is, Chase will have this assessment that can be shared soon, I hope. But, I've thought the same thing. And I've talked with Lori Saunders, Parks and Rec. You have 1,400 acres. How can we maximize that? I've also talked with Fish and Wildlife. Would Fish and Wildlife be interested? They are the experts on public lands in Kentucky, in my opinion. I've talked to Rich Storm about that. So I'd value your all's input, but I agree. We either need to improve it or look at options that somebody else could improve it for our community's use.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it just goes hand in hand with what we're talking about there. We've been sitting on it for years.
No.
I know it was a great attempt and all that, and anytime you deal with the courts,
so we kind of pulled that Band-Aid off too today.
Lots of Band-Aids.
Yeah.
I have one question about the reservoir property. If we'd got that done years ago, it would have bought us time, and it's a shame we didn't get it. That's another issue. But my concern is, I think at least one property, eminent domain, was used to acquire at least one of those properties.
I've investigated this.
Does that tie our hands anyway?
One piece of property, in my opinion, what I understand, the previous owner in the agreement has first right of refusal if it ever is sold. But I need to ask Rand to like double, like we need to have hard information on that if we want to go forward. But if say we lease that property to Fish and Wildlife, I don't think that would impact it.
So I don't think there was an eminent domain. I remember talking to Judge Lusby about it because, the reservoirs in our district. So just for information, there are a group of folks that use the northern half, and they have horseback riding trails. And in fact, they spend a lot of time every year working on their trails, clearing and so forth. Just for information, they were some of the first people that contacted me the first year I was on the court. And then on the south part of the reservoir property, there's folks folks come from all around, out of state even, to ride bikes, and they develop and maintain some trails just like the horseback riding people. I've talked to both of those groups, and they're actually pretty protective, but I also reminded them that it belongs to the county, it belongs to everybody. So,
and I think our job is to,
try to
how
figure
does
out
it, what do we need to do with it? Do we improve it? Or what other options exist? And, the bicycle group that does the, they've got their own website. It's called Skullbuster Trails. And people come from all over the place to ride there.
Surrounding states, actually.
Yeah. And they've got their website, and it's an attraction. And that's been a practice that's been, the horseback trails and the bicycle, it's been a practice since before I came in as judge.
I was contacted just before COVID hit by a gentleman that lives in Mallard Point, and he had some ideas. I may need to touch back base with him because kind of everything went COVID, So, but he was talking about some ways. He had some ideas of some possible improvements that everybody could, use. I know some scouting troops have been down there and camped and that kind of thing.
If Fish and Wildlife were involved, I do know for a fact that horseback and bicycling would not be an option. Walking would, but what I've been told is horseback would not be an option. So just sharing that.
If who was involved?
If Fish and Wildlife,
That's weird.
I'm just telling you that's what
that'd be right up their alley.
Now could that change possibly? Yes, but that's been what's been shared initially. Just being totally transparent.
So maybe you have them handle a part of it, and then the northern part where the trails are, let those folks continue to.
And that would be an option.
Trails.
And there's no, just everything's on the table. But I'm with Dwayne that we and everybody else here, I think everybody agrees, we need to have a plan and look at options and then go from there.
I'll make
Can we get the legacy trail there? Can we get the legacy trail out?
Lordy B.
There went the whole box of Band-Aids.
Well, I was going to make a comment because I've actually ridden those trails on a horse and on a bike, and when we look at the future of that place, and it'd be great to continue what we're doing, but when you're hauling a horse trail and you get on back of some of those roads, it's hard when you meet another horse trailer coming.
Just go to Gaines Road.
I don't know how much we want to encourage a lot of traffic. I mean, it's great that we've got it, but it's also dangerous if it gets real busy.
It's like trying to shove a watermelon down a garden hose.
I've had to back up down hills, and it's not fun.
In the summertime, I mean, that's already a busy intersection. There's Long Lake on the Gaines Road in the summer weekends. I mean, it's a steady stream of horse trailers going in there. I mean, it's probably dozens a day, a lot of days. So it's heavily used. So.
Oh, it does. It's a great facility for that, and I'd like to see it if we look and go that route, that maybe something could be used. Right.
Widen the roads.
But anyway.
Horseman and bike enthusiast Kelly Corman.
He said he did, not that he does.
I did, correct.
One time.
Is the map of the reservoir on planning and zoning? If you want to take a look at it, okay.
Now those trails aren't on planning and zoning.
Right.
Yeah, but it is. I have a map in my office as well. So
I got
Dr. Wallace.
So I've been thinking in this last week, and I shared this with you a few weeks ago about EV charging stations. And if you don't know what EV are, they're electric vehicle charging stations. There is some money that is coming down for infrastructure from the feds that's going to come down to the counties that hopefully we will be able to apply for. And I think it might be prudent for Judge to look at, maybe with Chamber of Commerce or Planning and Zoning, of some potential locations for those that would maximize tourism, commercial, people coming to our businesses. It might be something as...
At the reservoir?
It could be at the reservoir. There's been other communities that have done this where they partnered with KU, and KU has put in the charging stations, and you swipe a card to charge your car, and the county's provided parking or you have it at the pavilion, and so it's a way to hopefully encourage people to come and utilize some of our assets in our county. So
Laurel County has a lot of them. Laurel does, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's something I think we need to put on the radar, and the first step is coming up with a map to possibly find some.
You want someplace
locations.
located near an interstate exchange and.
Walmart has them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the only ones in Georgetown. Actually, I think Toyota has them for their electric cars, but Walmart's the only place.
If you include tourism on this, I think at tourism would be a great spot.
That
Just
might be.
just because when people are charging up, they'll walk in and go in and
Check
find
things
other
out.
places to go to in town. And
I agree.
yeah,
The other thought was with our need for a workforce, and this might be something that you might want to have the jailer do, Judge, or you may want to look at it on your own. The possibility of looking at doing a simulator for CDL, so that it might be something that we are allowing our inmates to be able to train, so that when they are released, they would have an opportunity to go into the workforce and to possibly get jobs and help the lack of labor that we have currently. That's just a thought that I had. And
I actually have a thought on that too, believe it or not. Laurel County Schools has a simulator that they use for their bus drivers. So it could be a scenario that where us, the school district, city,
Public
because you
Works.
could use it
Shepherd's
for
House.
CDL drivers all across the
Shepherd's
county
House.
and the governmental entities. It was, they bought it about 7 years ago. It was about $100,000.
okay, so that's the call. I have no idea.
Yeah,
what the
it was
cost
about $100,000 7 years ago.
And then Nathaniel's group.
It might be
I mean,
just
all-
an opportunity. I'm just sitting here thinking.
But I've been on it and, driven on it, and you can program in all kinds of scenarios and weather and everything else, and it's pretty cool.
So the possibility of having a simulator that the school system, county government, maybe city government, Shepherd's House,
Gathering
and our
place.
detention center.
set them up so when it's time, they can go get a job.
So I've taken note of that, and we'll look into that. Anything else?
But we've talked about this and talked about this too. We're blue in the face. Trash pickup. Why don't we just friggin' get together and decide we're going to hire a couple people that goes around and picks up trash? Whether it's city, county, share, one each. If we keep waiting for our inmates to pick up trash, it's not going to happen.
I have talked
It's
to.
affecting our stormwater stuff. It's affecting all the kinds of nonsense.
I can't agree more, and I've already talked to JR, and the prospect of adding two staff members that their focus is picking up trash, but it would be very smart to collaborate with the city on this. And see if we just couldn't have a trash detail of staff members that, that was their job. And then I'm still in support of using Swartz in the future as well, just because you get that blitz.
Sure.
But this would be a year-long, that.
They might only have to do it
maintenance.
once a year with that.
Yeah, maybe once.
Right. As opposed to two or three times.
But I can't agree more.
And I don't know what you do with businesses and stuff like that. It really bothers me that places like Walmart and those other things can't, as a homeowner, I have to pick up trash. Whoever throws it in front of my yard, I still have to go pick up my trash in my yard, regardless if it's in the easement or not. And we've got places like Walmart and those other places that don't do anything as far as their easement areas. It really bothers the heck out of me.
Well, is that something code enforcement can fine them for?
We can write them up for trash.
It's every day.
$50, I don't think that hurts it.
Right, I mean, they're making tons of money to give them the trash that they're throwing into the.
Dwayne, I'll
get with you on that.
I'll add that to the list. Anything else?
Hey, Judge.
Is that Jared Holland, our solid waste coordinator?
Yes. I'd like to add a few comments. Dwayne brings up some good points. As you know, we get our yearly litter abatement grant, and also the city gets a yearly allotment grant too. So I definitely think it's something that we can sit down and talk and maybe both help fund a position or two to help in this litter problem. So I'd be glad to participate and do any type of research that y'all need me to do.
Well, you know what, and I've noticed this a lot lately too, and Jared, maybe you can help us there. You know, the Rumpkes, the Republics, and whatever. I mean, they're running around with these big trucks, dropping. I mean, I watched one of them drop stuff out of the trucks the other day. I mean, so you're seeing some of these bags of trash falling off their trucks, and then they're getting scattered everywhere. I don't know if there's a way to,
local law enforcement can try to make it a point to look for trucks that are not properly covering their
Tarps.
loads.
I mean,
hey, basically what it is it's a tarping issue, and I can reach out to Rumpke and Republic, and then Wellman also, because we have 3 trash haulers that are, have signed up with our office. So I'll be more than glad to contact them, and just a reminder of proper tarping. I know they all get busy and get going, and I do know that happens sometimes.
Jared and I have talked just recently on the same issue because I've had some more people calling me, and I don't know if we can maybe target a few of the hot spots here sooner than later, just the places that look really bad, and hire this group to, and maybe not try to do a big expansive, but maybe.
They don't want to come in unless it's
Yeah, they'll only come in if it's.
Right?
Yeah, they can't make any money off of a small,
Like
because it's a state contract type of deal where it's
Yeah.
like $100 an acre or
$100 a mile.
$100 a mile.
Yeah, okay.
so they can.
But Kelly, that's a good point, and I think that kind of goes back to what Judge Covington and JR have had discussions about. If you could identify, maybe adding a couple people to a department and, use funding with the litter abatement grants from the city and county, I do think we could kind of, we get those calls, we could go out and, definitely hit some of those areas that always seem to be troubled.
Yeah, I emailed the jailer, Mr. Broyles, recently, and of course he kind of come back and said they're still kind of, with COVID restrictions and all, it's still pretty far out, it seems like, before they'll be able to do anything.
So I 100% agree with pursuing, seeing if the city would want to collaborate on a litter abatement team that would be designated, and I'll get back with everybody on that. Anything else?
Adopt a highway? Do we adopt a highway anywhere in the county?
Yeah, there's plenty of them.
There's plenty of
But
signage.
I don't know if they're active.
Signage. I mean,
Well,
you
see,
put a sign up. What's that mean?
Noticed them. That's why I'm asking.
You want me to print your name on the back of one of them?
Take a marker and put my name over there.
Mr. Hostetler?
So I was contacted this week about the large truck semis coming off of exit 129, and more than likely they're bypassing the scales and they go up to the Sadieville exit on US 25. And so I've already talked to the judge about it, and I've had an extensive conversation yesterday with the sheriff about it. And we found out yesterday, for some of you guys were there yesterday, when I don't remember the state rep's name, that was a former state trooper. And he talked about
John Blanton from McGoffin?
He's from McGoffin, yeah.
That sounds right. Well, he talked about the state police normally would have, at this time, they should have 1,000, not troopers, but 1,000 employees. And I believe he said that number's down to 700, and he said about 350 is all that's actually troopers on patrol. And my point is this: I had this conversation with the sheriff yesterday, and we were talking about trucks, and because in the past, there was a state trooper that got to operate. He's retired now, Joey Johnson, and he covered a lot of that area. He lived up that way. It was beneficial. Sometimes he caught them when he was going home. They were bypassing the scales. And so I talked to the sheriff about it, and he said he's going to add some patrols, but they're a little bit limited. They're not allowed, they're not qualified. I hope I'm using the right term. His deputies are not qualified to do what a state trooper can do, like Joey Johnson. He was the trooper. He's retired now, but he had been specially trained to handle that. And the sheriff was telling me that the state police won't, they're the ones that provide that training, but they won't provide deputies, or they won't do it for sheriff's departments. So I thought it would be worth talking somehow to generate a conversation, because that state rep, did you say his name was Blanton?
John Blanton out of
Yeah, I think that's right. He talked about how limited many counties have as far as state police coverage, and we don't have any that actually operate in Scott County, and I think that's been the case for a number of years, especially since
Joey left.
Since Joey left, and when he retired, and he actually retired for a second time this last time. So, but I thought that would be a good conversation. I don't know who to have that with, but that would affect sheriff's departments across the state.
Would that include Kentucky Vehicle Enforcement?
It may.
Or are they in that number, or, the ones that actually man?
Well, no, I don't think so, because of the statements he made. I think he was just talking state police, but.
Well, I think they merged vehicle enforcement in with state police a few years ago.
I don't know that answer.
I think it's one
They've
agency
got
now,
control
they're
of both
different. I
departments.
think it's.
Okay. Maybe.
They have to take an inspection class so they can do that.
The vehicle enforcement?
Vehicle enforcement and state police.
Okay.
And you have to, if you get a hold of Department of Criminal Justice in Richmond, that would be the ones. I had meetings with them on fire investigators, with those in the state police and the state attorney.
So maybe.
They are the ones who do all the training. So they basically, the commissioner of state police would have to give them the blessing to allow that, if you all want to pursue that kind of angle.
I guess you'd have to find out if there's a KRS about it.
Who is that again, Jim?
DOJCT down in Richmond.
I don't know who that is now.
I can find you some phone numbers.
If you would, and then, at the conference we were at, I believe I heard, like, they need 300 more state troopers now.
Yeah, they're wanting to get back. They're down to 700. That's the number he used.
That's going to
Were you
increase
there?
it. I mean, they've
Yes,
done
yes.
some things. They've done some things already.
They used the number of, right now, they got 700 staff. I don't want to call them troopers, because he made.
Not all of them are on the road.
Well, you got leadership, you got detectives, you got, and he said something like 350 at the most is all that's on the road. I believe the number he used is 350 out of the 700. I think he said between 3 and 350. And yeah, he talked about they would love to have 2 or 3 classes going right now. They can't get enough for one, hardly. I mean, get enough applicants. So, I mean, that was a big conversation, and they were talking about, pay raises and that kind of thing. But after talking with the sheriff yesterday, that's something, you could get a few deputies, and he said he actually has deputies that would love to get that training. And so.
Jim had one other.
What Mr. House said, I'll give you an example. There were 16 arson investigator detectives throughout the Commonwealth. They're down to 7, and they won't rehire.
They won't rehire?
They're not for that position right now, because they're trying to staff the other positions. So, I mean, that's just,
Not right.
Where it's at.
Yeah, so.
Well, I just thought it would be and if we can start there, and then maybe go through our state delegation, Yeah.
Well, I think we've got a lot of things to consider, and if anybody doesn't have anything else, I'll adjourn our meeting. So, thank you all.
I want the Band-Aids to rip off.
I know. Y'all are wearing me out.
I was waiting I wanted to stay here till the bell rang.